Welcome. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to the man who is on a mission to help you achieve financial freedom, Fernando. He is the president and founder of Total Solutions Property Management. Francis first invested in residential real estate while maintaining his corporate job as a senior engineer for Verizon Communications. He very quickly learned that balancing both his demanding corporate job and his aspiration to invest in real estate required a system with structure and discipline. Francis has structure and process deeply ingrained in his background and has used these skills as the foundation upon which he has built not only his own portfolio of real estate holdings, but also his own business. Today, his company manages over 400 residential units for various clients across the nation and around the globe. Francis is now sharing his system for successful real estate investing. This program will teach you the intricate skills and give you the tools, confidence, and the right gut feeling to create a supplemental stream of income by investing in residential real estate. This course is like no other. When you're finished, you will have a plan and the knowledge to get started. And now, here is Fernando.
My name is Fernando, and today I am going to be discussing how to keep your corporate job and invest in residential real estate. About 5 years ago, I started a property management company in Manchester, New Hampshire, and that company today manages over 350 residential units in Manchester and in the Seacoast region of New Hampshire. One of the top reasons that I get phone calls in my office is from clients saying, "Hey Francis, I've graduated the Robert Kiyosaki School of Real Estate, the Dave Lindahl School of Real Estate, and I want to buy a piece of real estate." And my question back to them is, well, why haven't you? The number one response I get is, well, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, and quite honestly, I don't know how to do it. Surprisingly, it's interesting because these folks just graduated the Robert Kiyosaki and Dave Lindahl Schools of Real Estate. Now, don't get me wrong, these schools are great. I actually use Dave Lindahl's cycles chart when I invest myself in real estate across the country. Great programs. What they don't teach you, unfortunately, is grassroots level on how to invest in your local market. And that's what this program is about today. Again, it's how to keep your corporate job and how to invest in real estate so that you can create a supplemental source of income. I've broken the program up into 3 components. In part 1 of the program, I will be talking about how to prepare your mindset before you invest in real estate. That's critical because a lot of people take that first step, and that first step, if it's made wrong, could be a costly first step. But more importantly, it could actually prevent you from taking further steps. So it's really a mindset. Part 1 is really a mindset change. I'll be going over the different personality types for you to understand what kind of person you are. I'll also be talking about the process of developing a game plan on how to actually purchase real estate. Then I'll be talking about scalability. Scalability is huge. That's how you scale your plan and your business so that you can grow it and get it to an attainable level that you personally want to. The last part of part 1 is to actually develop your success team. You folks have always heard of people saying surround yourself with the right team. I actually say develop and learn how to lead your success team. In part 2, we're going to discuss cash flow, leverage of real estate, and also the tax benefits. So really, the essence of part 2 is why even get into real estate? I mean, real estate is not like a stock, it's a working investment. Why even get involved in real estate? So that's really what I'll be doing. In part 3 is when we're going to actually roll up our sleeves and really get into the tools and the nitty-gritty of real estate investing. In that section, I'll actually be giving you some tools on how to determine the performance of a real estate asset, how to actually drive your success team. The tools, again, the letters that you would be sending out, how to actually formulate that. Now, folks, I was in your position. I was actually that corporate guy that invested in real estate. Unfortunately, I did make a few mistakes. I was that guy that got stuck because I did not have a scalability plan, nor did I have a process. And I wish I went through a course like this before I actually invested in real estate. Now, don't get me wrong, I am happy that I did buy real estate, and I'm happy that I built up that portfolio, because the fact that I did was the emergence of the formation of my property management company. Again, I built up a large number of multifamily units, could not find a property management company that was process-oriented, and therefore I formed this company to be able to manage my own units. The reason I got stuck, again, is because I did not have a scalability plan. I failed on being able to scale my plan from a time perspective, from a financial perspective, and from a logistics perspective. I got stuck. I had my corporate job. I was traveling across the country. I had tenants calling me. I had maintenance issues that I did not have an infrastructure to care for, and I got stuck. And that's what I want to go through today. I do want to touch base with you and let you know that what this program is not about is a get-rich-in-1-minute type program. I don't feel there is a product that gets you rich in 1 minute. So this program does not cover that. In real estate, you really have to understand what you're doing. It's a working investment, so this is definitely something that you need to work towards. My other promise and guarantee to you is that this is not where I give you half a millimeter of information and expect you to pay for every centimeter of information beyond that. This is a full-scale program that will cover everything that you need to know on how to, again, keep your corporate job and invest in multifamily residential real estate to have that supplemental source of income. One more disclaimer: I'm not an economist, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a statistician, because I will be touching on a lot of these concepts as I go through this program. I am an engineer that worked the corporate lifestyle. I did that for 12 years, and I decided to invest in real estate. So I'm an engineer with a property management background, with a love for business and process. So in 2003, while I had my corporate job, I had this grandiose plan that I was going to build a portfolio of 100 residential units. And I bought my first 5-family multifamily building in Manchester in 2003. The goal was to buy a building a year to build up to this portfolio. I stuck through that plan. In 2004, I bought my next 6-family building. So now I was up to 11 residential units. Still able to keep my corporate job. I was traveling. Life was good. I was making money on the rents. I was able to take care of maintenance, showing vacant apartments, not an issue. 2005 came around, and I bought a larger building. I stepped it up a bit, and I bought an 8-unit apartment building. Fairly unstable building, needed some issues, bought that building, and that's when things started to change for me. But it was interesting. It did not change just because of the residential aspect of it. It changed from a financial standpoint. I put so much of my corporate cash into each of these buildings, and I did not have a plan on how to get the money back so I could keep reinvesting it in real estate, and I got financially stuck. Not only did I get financially stuck, I also got logistically stuck because I couldn't care for these buildings. So what happened is, every time I was on a plane trip flying somewhere, inevitably I'd get a call from one of my residents saying, I have no hot water, or I'm not paying my rent because my mom died, or some grandiose idea that residents would come up with. I started interviewing property management companies and could not find a management company that was structured or process-oriented as much as I wanted it to be. Throughout that period, from 2005 until 2007, my vacancy rates went down. The collected income that I had on these buildings started going down, again because of vacancies, troubled issues with the buildings. I could not show up for showings when there was vacant apartments, and so I decided something had to give. Either I let the buildings go, or I leave my corporate job and I struggle through and determine and figure out how to actually manage these buildings and keep my corporate job. That was the onset and the creation of Total Solutions, because again, I could not find a company to be able to manage it. It got to the point where my real estate was actually not even supporting itself. I was using my corporate income to be able to support the buildings, And unfortunately, that was not my original business intention. I had intended on these buildings becoming a supplemental source of income. Folks, you don't want to invest in real estate and have to feed it with your corporate money. The purpose of investing in real estate, because again, it is a working asset, is for it to stand independently on its own and operate as a business. So at this point, we're actually going to step right into the program, and as I mentioned, part one is where we are going to discuss what to do before you take that first step. And what I mean in this section is, how do you get your mindset around getting into real estate? We all have friends and family that have leapt into business without really having a thought process or knowing exactly what they're doing. Sometimes these folks do really well, and they're a source of inspiration to us. Sometimes these folks do really poorly and jump back into their corporate job, and that becomes a deterrent to us. So in this section, again, we will be setting up our mindset and framing our thought processes so that we can eventually develop the tools and go down the path of keeping our corporate job and investing in real estate. To understand that, you need to understand what type of person you are. In my travels in business and in my corporate job, I've come across what I call 5 different business personality types. And it's important for us to understand what type of person that we are. The first type of person that I've seen is people who do nothing. These are folks who are just comfortable in what they're doing and very happy in what I call status quo. I'm going to use an example of a friend of mine, a young lady called Angie that I used to work with at Verizon back 10 years ago. And Angie and I used to sit in a cubicle, you know, the typical corporate office. We had a cubicle right next to each other. And Angie would come in to work every single day at exactly the same time. She would eat the same lunch. She would drink from the same cup of coffee, but she was happy with what she did. People like that are happy with the status quo. And folks like that don't really want to grow their businesses, and that's okay. But you just need to understand what type of personality you are. The second person is people who do nothing, but they overanalyze. I call this paralysis by analysis. These are folks that think and analyze. They have spreadsheets, they have charts that match into each other, but they can't actually get into that motion, and they can't actually act on what they do. I'm going to use an example of my buddy Pete. Pete was again an engineer, worked with me for many years, and Pete always had these grandiose ideas of opening up these various sorts of businesses. And he would come to me every day with these charts and these spreadsheets and say, look at the amount of income that I could do. One particular example was he wanted to form a company that would be a brokerage company for mortgages. So when people were buying unstable real estate that a bank would not finance, he would create a fund that would allow people to tap into that fund, and he would essentially be a broker. So he would get a stake of money for introducing a money lender to the borrower, and he would get a percentage of the income. Great idea. Great spreadsheets, the numbers looked great. What Pete failed to do was act on that plan. The third personality type is people who do nothing and talk. These people kind of get under my skin, but people who do nothing and talk. Another good friend of mine, his name is Mark. Family friend. I actually see him at all the sports events where my kids go for soccer and baseball. And Mark's, again, got these grandiose plans. No analysis, absolutely no analysis, but he's got these great plans on how he's going to travel across the globe, and he's going to start a public speaking career, and he's going to inspire people on how to get into business. Every time I ask him an analytical question and say, hey, so what's your marketing plan? He has no idea what the marketing plan is. So these are folks that just talk, but every time you meet them, they've got a different idea that they're working on. Finally, these people who simply do without any analysis. Now, these people are interesting because they could do one of two things for you. They could either inspire you if they do well, or they could cripple you if they do really poorly. An example is an old college buddy of mine. His name is Devin. Devin did really well. Devin came up with this idea of buying automobiles, salvage title automobiles, from Canada. He would fix them up, and he would document the restoration of that car throughout its restoration process. And what he would do is he'd document that on a YouTube video. He'd show them, full disclosure, he'd show them that, hey, this car was in this condition before, and here's where it is now. These were all high-end cars. Here was the documented process. I'm selling it for substantially less than what that car normally would fetch in the market, but it's got a salvage title. For a consumer, that was great because, hey, they knew exactly what the car looked like, what the restoration process was, and they know they're paying $5,000 or $6,000 less. Great, great inspiration. But what I do want to get at is what I call the final personality type, which is a blended business personality type. And to be blended, you need just the right amount of confidence, you need just the right amount of gut feeling, and you need just the right amount of analysis. And that's what you need if you're going to keep your corporate job and start investing in real estate. You need that blended business personality type. You need to take the best attributes of all those 4 personalities, meld it together, and that's going to be really your success story. I'll tell you, that's the personality type that I used when I formed Total Solutions Property Management. Again, 5 years ago, I had that corporate job. I had young kids at the time, and it was a huge risk for me to step out of my corporate job where I was making significant income and be able to form a company and get into the world of the unknown. How did I do that? I did that with just the right amount of analysis. I did have a business plan. I did have a spreadsheet, but I didn't go crazy with my spreadsheet. I also did have the right amount of gut feeling. I felt good about it. I talked to my wife about it. And I had the confidence. That's key. I had the confidence, and I developed the skills to be able to know what exactly it is to work in business. So after we've understood what type of personality we are, the next thing that we want to understand is what I call the business process wheel. The process wheel has actually been kind of an inspiration to me. It's been the tool that I've used as I built my business, but it's also the tool that was kind of pushed down on me when I was in engineering school. Engineers, as you know, are very process driven, and my 11-year career at Verizon working as an engineer, this was my mantra. I focused on process. Every time I was faced with a problem or faced with a situation, I worked and I ran that situation through what I call my process wheel. And in the world of business, if you're getting into real estate, you need to understand what process is. Process has 4 segments to it. The first one is identify, execute, measure, and support. I'm going to go through each one of these. But if you're going to, again, step into the world of investing, you need to understand part 1, identify. What is your investment strategy? Folks, unfortunately, we can't do everything. We can't invest in every type of real estate that's out there. There's commercial real estate, there's residential real estate. Within residential, which is what we're discussing here, there's condominiums, there's 4 units or less, which is considered residential financing. There's 5 units or greater, which is considered commercial financing. There's stable properties, there's unstable properties. We've got to figure out exactly what our investment direction and investment strategy is. So identify, again, is to really pinpoint exactly with precise direction what your strategy is. The next one is execute. In the execute phase, this is where a lot of folks, especially a lot of corporate folks, fail, because this is where the excuses come. Oh, I don't have time. I just, I'm traveling. I've got work stress. In the execute phase, one of the things that you need to do, first of all, is make sure that you create time to work on your business. Execution is actually taking that first step and figuring out if my investment direction and my investment strategy is 4 units or less, then what's my execution phase that supports that? The next section is measure. What's my internal measure? How am I going to keep myself honest to my investment strategy? And when I do execute, did I execute right? Did I buy the right property? Did I learn from my mistakes? And that's what's key, measuring your results against your strategy. And that could be a financial measure. It could be a personal measure. It could be a financial measure and say, hey, my intention was to have a property that creates $2,000 a year of cash flow. Well, did it create $2,000 of cash flow? Or it could be a personal measure. It could be, hey, you know what, I want to develop a portfolio of real estate that I could hand down to my kids. Well, have you stabilized that piece of real estate that you can pass down to your kids? It's an internal measure. The next one is support. And the best way to describe support is, do you have a system to clear the obstacles? Again, I mentioned we're trying to keep our jobs and invest in real estate. What are the obstacles that's going to prevent you from actually doing that? Work, stress, travel. How do we clear those obstacles? How do we support our initiative and our investment strategy? That's the key. I've got a great story for you. Tony, good friend of mine, investment partner. Tony was an engineer, very similar to me. Very, very, very process driven. Tony decided over 15 years ago that he was going to invest in real estate. His objective was to match his income, his engineering income, with his real estate portfolio. Clear direction. Tony developed a process wheel, probably not similar to this, but in his engineering mind, he had a process wheel. His identify was 6 units or greater, bank-owned, unstable real estate. There was a reason for that. Again, 6-unit residential, that's commercial financing. Unstable, which meant bank-owned. Unstable meaning from a resident perspective, the tenant base was unstable. From a maintenance perspective, the properties were unstable. So that was his market. He identified that's what he wanted to do. He developed an execution strategy that matched what his investment strategy was. To execute, he realized that he needed to talk to the banks. He was looking at bank-owned. He needed to have a commercial banker lined up that would finance that. He needed to have maintenance crews to be able to come through and stabilize and rehab the unstable units. He also needed a management company. Here's a shameless plug on myself, but that's what we did for him, is we stabilized his properties from a tenancy standpoint, but he needed to have his tenancy stabilized as well. Because he was an engineer, he was very, very analytical. His measure phase, after he identified, he executed, he went through, and his goal was a certain amount of cash flow from his real estate stabilization effort. He measured the net cash flow that each property generated for him. And that measure was against his original intention and his strategy. He supported that. How did he support that? He actually surrounded himself with the right team, with the banks, with the property management companies, with the maintenance crews, but he didn't just surround himself with them, he led them. He was smart enough to understand that he needed to control them and lead them, and so he understood what their businesses were, and he was able to. Today, Tony owns a portfolio of 120 residential units, and Tony's supplemental income, free and clear, is $282,000. Folks, he was able to match and then some his income. He's currently managing his portfolio of 120 units. He doesn't really deal with the operational aspects of it because he's got a property management company that stabilizes and manages the operational aspects of it. And once we've developed a process wheel, the next section that we need to understand is what I call scalability. Scalability and process are actually synonymous. In other words, you can't have a scalable business plan unless you have a process around it. And technically, if you have a good process, you should be able to scale your business an infinite number of times. To define scalability, business scalability is the systematic, process-oriented ability to replicate and duplicate, again, replicate and duplicate the desired economic outcome of an initiative over and over again. I know that's a long, big, large sentence, but essentially, to put into the world of real estate, that is, if you bought a 4-family building, I'm going to use the 4-family building as an example. If you bought a 4-family building, it was unstable, you stabilized it, and you were able to create a stream of cash flow. If it was a process-driven, scalable plan theoretically, you should be able to buy an infinite number of 4-family buildings over and over and over again. So scalability is huge. So let me give you an example about Luke and Rick. Luke and Rick are clients of mine that hired our firm about 4 years ago. And Luke and Rick originally managed their building. They pooled their resources. They were, one of them, Luke, in fact, was a pharmacist, and Rick was a hairdresser. And they got together and they pooled their resources and bought this investment building. And they self-managed it. They self-managed it up until the point that life got in the way. Life got in the way because they couldn't do showings. When they first hired us, they had, in the 3-unit building, they had 2 vacancies, 1 occupant. So 1 rent coming in. Financially, they started getting hurt. Every time they had a scheduled showing, they weren't there for the showing to show the vacant apartment. Every time they wanted to get work done on the units, they hired a contractor. Contractor claimed they did the work. Luke and Rick showed up. The work wasn't done to their expectations. And so things started spiraling downhill. Where was the error here? The error was in the scalability of the plan. Luke and Rick did not think about how they were going to post-manage the building and what time resources that they were both going to allocate to managing the building. Who benefited from that was us. We're managing the building now. We've stabilized it. Now it's a good news story. What Luke and Rick need to do now is work on their scalability so that they can increase the number of units. And that's one thing that I'm working on with them. After scalability, the next thing that we need to think about, again, before we make our first step, is leading, what I call leading your success team. We've all been told that successful people surround themselves with the smartest and the best. I agree with that to a certain extent, but my mantra is more, you should surround yourself with the right and the smart people, and you should be able to lead them. So it's about leading your success team. We've been told, and I know this for a fact, many presidents of many nations really don't make the decisions. It's the strategic advisors around them that make the decisions. And to me, that's fearful. It's fearful because sometimes, if it's not the right person, too much reliance is placed on a third party, and that third party may not have your best interests in mind. To bring that into the terms of real estate, what I call your success team, or your core success team, is your real estate agent, your banker, your insurance agent, and your property manager. Again, your core success team, to be able to get into this industry, is your real estate agent, your banker, your insurance agent, and your property manager. Now sure, we can come up with other industries such as attorneys, or for that matter, plumbers and electricians. But for the success of the strategy of investing, they're really not your core team, and so this is your core team. To be able to lead your success team, what you need to do is develop the skills necessary to drive them. And how do you develop skills necessary to drive an industry that you have no experience in? Is understanding how that industry affects you. So for example, what drives a property manager? I've heard the term manage your property manager, and I love that term. You know, every time I get a call from a client looking to hire my services, the question I get is, hey Francis, how much do you charge? And that's the extent of the conversation that I have with them, because they don't know how to manage me. They haven't taken the time to learn what a property manager does and how a property manager can affect your business. Take the time to learn their industries, because they're going to affect how you do business and how successful your strategy is. Again, learn what a real estate agent does. Learn how he or she can impact your industry. Learn what drives a bank. Why are banks financing, or why are banks putting out money to invest in real estate? There's got to be a benefit for them. So it's got to be a mutual benefit. You've got to understand what drives a bank and what drives them to give you a loan potentially. Likewise with an insurance agent, to get the best rates in insurance, you need to be able to drive that behavior and showcase your property and showcase the positive attributes of your property to be able to get that best policy rate. So in the next couple of sections, what we're going to actually get into is learning the skills and learning the tools to be able to lead your core success team.